So I'd like to welcome everybody to Newham's Black History Month. We've got a really good evening ahead of us. I'd like to let everyone know that this is going to be recorded, so hopefully for viewing later on our website. Do keep an eye on the rest of the programme because we've got an amazing month ahead of events, several of which Neandra has put together for us, but do keep an eye on www.newhamblackhistory.org. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Neandra Etienne, who's going to be presenting this evening, celebrating Newham's black football players through the years.
Yeah, hi, good evening everyone. I won't be speaking for too long because I understand I might have some problems with my sound. Hopefully you can hear me. Welcome to this online event. You'll be able to hear from the families today from Jack Leslie, John Charles and Walter Tull. And also hear from the guest speakers. The first speaker will be Jack Leslie family. So I will literally pass you straight on to Greg, who will do a little introduction about Jack Leslie, and then it will be on to Jack Leslie's family.
Thank you, Neandra, and hello everybody. My name's Greg Foxsmith. I'm from the Jack Leslie campaign, and it was last year, in fact, that we hit our fundraising target for a statue for Jack Leslie, who was born in Canning Town, so he is a Newham footballer by he grew up. This team was Bark before he joined Plymouth Argyle, where he was a very successful footballer for many seasons, scoring 137 goals in 400 appearances. The main stat about Jack Leslie is that at the time he joined Plymouth, he was the only black footballer playing in the league. He later became the first black footballer to captain a professional football side. And in 1925, he became the first black footballer to be selected to play for England. But the FA rescinded that call up when they realised that he was black. He never got to play. And it was 1978 before Viv Anderson became the first black footballer to play for the full England international men's team. So when myself and some fellow Argyle fans and friends found out about this, we decided to set up the campaign. The first was to build a statue. The statue will be completed next year. It will be the first statue of a footballer at Home Park, Plymouth Argyle's ground. But the second thing we wanted to do was to use the Jack Leslie story. We wanted to share the Jack Leslie story and use it to combat prejudice and discrimination, which is still rife both in football and society. And that's taken us onto a great journey, I have to say. Along the way, just after we launched, there was Black Lives Matter movement, was in full protest mode. The statue of Colston came down, and we realized that this was a great opportunity because the statue of a slave trader was being torn down. We were campaigning to put a black footballer up, and that really resonated well. I'm going to do an old-fashioned way. I don't do the screen share, but I just want to show you a
I think we've lost Greg. Dominic.
Oh, it's back.
Hi guys, I crashed out, didn't I? Sorry. Am I back?
You are, yeah.
I'm back. Can you anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, you're nodding. Okay. So we designed some maquettes. The statue is in full force. Also on this journey, I've met many people, historians,
I think he's crashed again.
Yeah, I think his connection is not so good. Maybe
born in 1901, he died in the 1980s. His daughter Evelyn survives, as do three granddaughters, two of whom are here tonight and can share some recollections and memories of Grandad Jack. So it's them really I want you to hear from tonight. But before I pass on, I want to just let you know that the full Jack Leslie story, the story of his incredible history, his adventures, the difficulties and discrimination that he faced and how he overcame them, will be told at a live event at the Canning Gallery on the 18th of October at 6 p.m. So please look out for details for that, and please do come along to hear the Jack Leslie story. But for now, let me pass on to Lynn and Leslie to tell their memories of Jack. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Leslie. I'm the eldest of Jack's granddaughters. We grew up in East Ham, London, and we actually lived with Nan and Grandad. So they had a huge impact on our lives. Grandad was a very kind, loving, gentle man. He had so much patience with us, but he could be quite strict and firm at times. He only had to give us a special look and we knew we'd gone too far. But he was a great storyteller. He used to keep us enthralled for quite a long time listening to his stories. And in fact, we used to invite our friends round, and it was quite well known amongst them that Grandad was the best storyteller. I don't know very much about his footballing years. He never spoke much about it, funny enough. We knew that he had been chosen to play for England and that he'd been rejected, but he never showed any sort of anger about that in any way. He was upset. It would have been the highlight of his life, obviously, but he never let it get to him. He kind of buried it. And it was my mum who actually bears the grudge. And although she's pleased now that he's getting the recognition that he should have had then, she says it's come a bit too late because he won't know about it, which is a huge shame. After finishing playing football, Grandad returned to London, to East Ham, and he went back to, he had training as a youngster as a boiler maker. And so he went to work in the docks, the East India docks, and he was working there during World War II, where obviously that kind of work was vital for the war effort. And eventually he retired, didn't know what to do with himself. And so it was Mum who suggested that he contact West Ham Football Ground to see if they could offer him a job. And he went up there, and I think it was Ron Greenwood at the time, knew Grandad, and said, oh yeah, I'll find you a little job. And he ended up as a bootman there. And I think he loved it because he was there, he could tell his stories and talk to the footballers, and I think he really enjoyed his time there. And eventually they moved away from London. They moved down to Kent. And unfortunately, he died in 1988. And it's been a huge miss to us. We still miss him now because he was such a big part of our lives. I don't know if Lynn wants to add any more.
I remember when my son Michael was interested in football, and that was when John Lyle had taken over as manager, and he got John Lyle to write a letter saying how important it was to have another trade, because football is only a young man's game and you've got to have something to fall back on. So to get a trade, you know, don't just think football, football, you must have a trade as well.
Are there any questions that anybody's got?
Can you tell us whether Jack himself really spoke about the England call-up and his own views on that, or was that something he'd moved on from?
He definitely moved on from that. I mean, he told us that he had been chosen for England and that he had been turned down because he was black, but he never made a great issue of it. It didn't rankle with him. He had moved on. And so he didn't talk about football very much at all. I think he thought that as girls, we wouldn't be interested in football. and so it wasn't really discussed that much.
In case Leslie and Lynn, you can't see the messages coming in on the chat.
Right, I'm going to take over. There's a message in the chat. Who was his favourite football player?
Oh, crumbs. I think Pele was one of his favourites. I think he thought he was an amazing player. And Eusebio, believe it or not. That is a difficult question because obviously he had a long life and there were a lot of good players during that time. But I think Pele was the one that jumps to mind first. I don't know if you agree, Lynn.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. With West Ham, it was Trevor Brooking, I think, was his favourite. He's the one he talked about most with West Ham.
Yeah, definitely.
Did he talk about what it was like growing up in Canning Town? You know, because they had one of the few cultural centres for black people. It's called the Coloured Seamen's Institute, and it because obviously being a docks area, it had lots of different nationalities and stuff. Did he ever talk about that aspect of life? How, you know, if he had any other black friends or anything at that time?
No,
I've never heard of anything.
No.
Well,
I think black people were quite few and far between as when he was a younger man, obviously. So it would only have been family members that would have been, you know, the same colour. So I doubt very much that he had other black friends.
Lynn and Leslie, another question's come into the chat. Do you know which school he went to?
No, I don't know.
All right, one for the researchers. I'll get Bill and David onto that. David, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I was just curious about the Warriors, obviously working in the docks area. I mean, that would have been a target for heavy German bombing. And I wondered if that was anything that ever got discussed about. And sorry, non-football related, but I'm just curious to know, yeah, it must have been quite dangerous living in that part of London, to be honest.
Well, absolutely, because obviously the East End of London took hell of a bombing. But he went in, he never, I don't think he really appreciated just how important the work was that he was doing. He never spoke about it. I know that Mum, as a child, then was evacuated, and Nan was kind of travelling backwards and forwards. Mum was in Oxfordshire, and she was travelling backwards and forwards to Oxford. But I should think they were really difficult years, although, again, it was never mentioned that much. He was a humble man.
But he was a left-handed riveter. So he was called on a lot because he could use his left hand as well as his right.
Brilliant. I think we're like, yeah, I think we're done with Jack. So I think we can move on to Phil, who will give a quick introduction about Water Tull, and then we will hear from the Water Tull family.
Yeah, you know, it's obviously from hearing about Jack's life at Plymouth, he's obviously very popular and had lots of friends and stuff. And you know, it's just struck me listening to Leslie and Evelyn and Greg that there's a lot of similarities between Walter and, you know, Walter was a humble man as well, and kind of did his talking on the pitch, so to speak. But he had a very, as we kind of touched upon last night, he had a very strong moral compass because of his Methodist faith, which was very important to him. But yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, about when we chatted at the gallery last night, he had a very good friend, Jabez Durando Darnell at at Spurs that I think helped him a lot. And it was really important because I mentioned that the Coloured Seamen's Institute in Canning Town, which was unique for its time, in that it was a place where people of colour who were seamen could find, you know, a welcome kind of refuge and a welcome environment, and it helped them. And I think with Walter at Tottenham, it was important. The relationships were important because he was obviously one of the first players of colour in the country and played at the top level. And there were at that time, no support organisations if you received abuse, or there was no kick it out or, you know, fair football against racism in Europe. So having good friendships, having supportive friendships was extremely important. And you know, he did have one in Jabez Darnell, which I you know, I think is worth mentioning. And you know, going back to his moral compass, he was humble, he had integrity, he was a loving person. There's, you know, evidence, and I'm sure Ed knows much more about this than me as a member of the family, that he used to send or give Sissy, his sister, signed books of poetry and signed history books and stuff, and he gave her drawings, and he was a very family-centered person, although he never married or had children. And I think that helped him, that kind of moral compass that he got from his Methodism, his Methodist faith, helped him in troubled times and difficult times. So I think that's worth mentioning. And he was, I remember Ed's mother saying to me when I first met her in the 90s, so that's Walter's niece, and the daughter of Walter's brother Edward, Ed's grandfather, saying that he actually, you know, he hated the war, although he signed up, as many people did in 1914. You know, he came to, as many soldiers who suffered and had to serve on the Western Front and see the horrors that there were, he began to hate the war and didn't. And I know that Ed's grandfather Edward was a pacifist, and that's very important. And I think that aspect of Walter and Walter's family needs to be brought out, because I think sometimes Walter was very, he did his duty and he fulfilled his obligations, and obviously he was a very good soldier. That's why he's commissioned and became an officer. And it would be, you know, he did his best at it's obvious he did his best at whatever trade or career he chose or was in. And I think that's a fantastic lesson for people of our generation and younger generations, that, you know, wherever you find yourself, if you give your best, nobody can really complain. He obviously did that, and that's why he was recognised and commissioned an officer and recommended for a military cross. But I won't say any more, because you've got Ed, who's his great nephew, so who knows far more about family history than I do, the Tull family history than I do. So I'll pass over to Ed and let him carry on.
Hello, I'm Ed Finlayson. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm coming to you from Edinburgh. I'm one of 4 siblings who are the grandchildren of Edward Tull, who was Walter's older brother and next of kin. And I'm listening enviously to Leslie and Evelyn, because you knew your grandfather. And sadly, I didn't even know my grandfather. He died a few months before I was born, thus I was given his name. And clearly I didn't know Walter, because however old I do look, and it may look as though I was alive in 1918, I wasn't. So Phil's kind in saying I'm going to talk about Walter. I'm probably going to talk far more about Walter's legacy because that's what I know about. And a lot of what I know about Walter laterally in my life is thanks to Phil Vasili. And maybe at the outset, I should say that unapologetically, we as a family feel that Phil, if it were not for Phil, we probably wouldn't be sitting here tonight. We might well not be talking about Walter Tull and his footballing history and his military history. Not because we as a family don't know about it. I've known about it since I was a young child and very proud of it. But it's Phil's work that has brought Walter's life to life and has resulted in, I think, a remarkable legacy. And I was very interested to listen to what you were saying, Greg, and the work you and others are doing. And it reminded me, I have to say as a family, how fortunate we are about the way in which Walter's life has been remembered in the last 20 years. And the manner and the way in which it's remembered. I think he's remembered for his resilience in the face of adversity, both in his upbringing and his careers, football and military. He had to overcome discrimination. And I think, as Phil says, he was a devout Methodist and he was very committed to the cause of equality and fairness. And we feel as a family very privileged that people now talk about Walter's story and seem to find some kind of inspiration, some kind of meaning in it. And I've had the very good fortune to be in places like Northampton, Bristol, Spurs, Folkestone, many places where Walter's life has been taken on as part of the education curriculum or a community project or an arts project or a play. If I talk about Bolton, the magnificent play about Walter's life. So we are, as a family, are very grateful for the manner in which Walter's life is remembered. As I said, there's four of us. I'm the one that drew the straw tonight to turn up on behalf of the family. I meant to say at the very beginning, we very much want to give our thanks to Neandra, who I've corresponded with over the last few weeks, but I'm delighted to see you and meet you tonight. And thank you so much for creating this exhibition. We really appreciate it. I'm very envious because Phil let slip there that he's actually popped in to see it firsthand, and I would love to be there. But because of the complications of age and COVID, etc., I'm not sure that I will make it down. But thank you, and thank you to Canning Gallery. Okay, and I hope I'll find a way of seeing the exhibition in some way or other, even if it's virtual. So I've talked about Walter's legacy. It has encompassed an extraordinary range of activities. Greg was talking about raising money for a statue, I think. In 2018, we were invited to Northampton, where they dedicated a statue in the Guild, I think in the Guild Hall, in the centre of Northampton, on the centenary of Walter's death. Phil himself, in 1999, was part of the opening of the magnificent memorial outside Six Fields. Phil wrote the very meaningful words, touching words on one side of that stone. And we're very grateful to Northampton Football Club and the people of Northampton in the manner in which they have adopted Walter's life and remember his story. There have been umpteen books. The most comprehensive and most meaningful is Phil's own biography. But people like Michael McPurgo, you may know, has written a children's book called Medal for Leroy. And what he acknowledges is that that was inspired by hearing about Walter's story and the issue of whether or not Walter should be awarded posthumously the military cross that he was recommended for. There's been extraordinary, there's been a Royal Mint £5 coin in 2014 as part of the First World War commemorations with Walter's image on it. And in 2018, a Royal Mail stamp. And I think Phil pointed out that we know there were various commemorative stamps throughout those 4 years by Royal Mail. But I think I'm right in saying Walter was the only person to be pictured on a stamp. So that's an immense honour. There have been umpteen exhibitions, large and small, Imperial War Museum, a wonderful exhibition in Folkestone a few years. Wonderful because it wasn't simply about Walter, it was about the whole family. And maybe just to remind you, I wasn't sure Phil would touch on this tonight. I think the family history is extraordinary, that Walter's father was Bayesian, came to Folkestone in the mid 1880s, married a local farm worker's daughter, Alice, and became very involved and incorporated in the Methodist and the local community of Folkestone. So the story of not just Walter, but of Daniel. And I have to say, sadly, recently my younger sister found Walter's grandfather, William Chris, on 4 slave registers. And some of you may have seen slave registers, but these look very simply like business accounting sheets. And William Chris is listed there, aged 9, 12, 14, 16. He's an object, he's a piece of property. So that part of the history, I think, cannot and must not be forgotten. And I find very, very poignant, very poignant. I haven't been watching my time, so who's keeping the time? I'm just about up, haven't I? Yeah. I can go on for hours. I would lastly say, if we sent Neandra at her request a letter that Walter had written to my grandfather when he was in France in the First World War in 1917. And I do recommend, if it's possible, to access that letter and read it. I think it's extraordinary. It's an account of him going out on a mission, lasting many, many hours and coming back. And I had just watched the film 1917 when I reread the letter, and I thought somebody stolen Walter's letter and used that for the screenplay. So I recommend the letter because of its very vivid descriptions, very factual. But my final comment, perhaps, is that at the end of that letter, he has a PS to my brother. And he says, I'm going to be seeking a transfer to the BWI, which was the British West Indies Regiment. And for me, that raises some questions about, I think Phil's described it well. Walter was one of the first volunteers to the Middlesex Footballing Regiment. But by 1917, he was looking as an officer to seek a transfer to a British West Indies Regiment. And why would that be? I don't have an answer to it, but it's left a big question mark in my mind. And I would just want to be clear, and I will shut up. We know from other records that Walter was very well liked and loved by his own men, one of whom placed his life at risk trying to retrieve Walter's body. So I don't think it was an issue between Walter and his men, but whether it was an issue between Walter and other parts of the army institution, I can't know. Anyway, I've gone on too long. Thank you for the opportunity and very interesting to hear other people's stories. Thank you.
I do believe we have some questions in the chat as well. Does anyone want to raise those?
David is pointing out so many things you can't mention. As a family, we were involved with the Barbados Museum Historical Society, who have done a virtual exhibition on Walter and the family. So it's online, and I think David's pointing out that it's still available.
We had a question. Did Edward ever go and watch his brother's football games?
Sorry, did I ever?
I think, did your grandfather ever go and watch Walter play?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, sadly, of course, the war intervened, so I don't have knowledge of it. We have photographs. Some of the photographs we've given for the exhibition are postcards from Walter to my grandfather. Then came the war. What we do know is that Walter had signed for Glasgow Rangers. And as you're recording this, I'm not going to say anything about that. But he had signed for Glasgow Rangers because my grandfather was closely associated with the club. A pretty serious footballer in his own right, my grandfather. And he had a great friend, Jimmy Bowie, who was chairman of Rangers. So, and I think there's some suggestion that Walter may have made guest appearances for Rangers, because players did that during the war when they were in a particular area. So the answer is I don't know. It's presumably theoretically possible that Walter played for Rangers and my grandfather saw him. I'll defer to Phil's knowledge.
I think it's interesting that your grandfather was also playing football in that prior to the First World War. And, you know, that on one day in March, on a Saturday in March 1909, he made his debut for Ayr Parkhouse against, I think, Cowdenbeath, while Walter was playing for Spurs in the Spurs A team, I think. He hadn't kind of, it was still officially a Clapton player, but both of them were playing, you know, the two brothers playing on the same Saturday, either side of the border. So I'd have thought, we know that Edward was playing football for Girvan Athletic as well. So maybe Ed just, Walter's brother probably didn't have time to get down to London, I should think, and watch his brother. He was either he's playing football or he had his, from 1912 on, he was a dentist. So, but as Ed said, I know that the family have that lovely signed portrait that Walter sent to his brother, your grandfather, Ed, when I think he made his Spurs debut, was it in 1909? He sent that a lovely signed portrait of himself, like with a message on the back. So, you know, it was obvious that the two were keeping in close contact about Walter's developing football career. But it's hard to know if Ed, if his brother got down to see him from Glasgow.
Brilliant. I think we'll move on now. We're going to have John Charles. We're going to have a little introduction from Bill, and then we're going to hear from Mitch.
Thanks, Neandra. I've been given 5 minutes to introduce John Charles to everyone, and it would take 5 minutes simply to list his many achievements. Having said that, he isn't anywhere near as well known as he should be. And there may very well be people in the audience who aren't absolutely certain who John Charles was and just what he achieved. So John's main claim to fame has to be that he was the very, very first black player to represent England at football. And a lot of people think that's Viv Anderson, or Viv Anderson was the first to represent them at full level. Benjamin Adigee, who was an England schoolboy, but John Charles was the first black player to play for England at football. And the incredible thing is, he came from Canning Town, which is where Jack Leslie was from. So, you know, Canning Town population of about 70,000, I guess. It had the man who should have been the first black player to play for England, and the man who was the first black player to play for England, with 37 years in between. Did Jack know John? Well, yes, he did, because John played for West Ham, and that's where Jack worked in the boot room. So they did know each other at an age, you know, once John was over 18 or whatever. But it's kind of hard to believe that they wouldn't have bumped into each other in Canning Town. John might have looked up to Jack, although he probably didn't know he was an ex-footballer, because Jack didn't really boast about that. But the Charles family must have been quite well known. John was one of 9 children. His mum was from Silvertown in London, and his dad was from Grenada in the West Indies. And they started off at Ordnance Road, moved to Ronald Avenue, and in the exhibition there are some wonderful photographs of John relaxing at home, and very sort of personal pictures which Mitch has supplied to the gallery. He was a very, very good player. As a boy, he signed for West Ham, 1959. 1962, he signed as a full-time professional, and that was when he started breaking records. On the 20th of May, 1962, he came on as substitute for England youth in an international game at Tel Aviv, Israel, and England won 3-1. And John, amazingly enough, scored a goal. So not just the first black player to play for England, but the first black player to score for England as well. And it was a very, very rare goal for John. I mean, he played 142 games, I think, for West Ham and only scored 2 goals. And yet here he is, he comes on the pitches for England, and within half an hour, he scored a goal. He won his first full cap 2 days later against the same opposition, Israel. They lost 2-1 this time. And he went on to win 5 England youth caps. But his international career wasn't finished. In 1967, he was selected for Young England. And it was traditional in those days for Young England to play the full England team on the weekend before the FA Cup final. Now, remember, England were world champions at this point. They'd just won the World Cup. Although Ed might think Scotland were the world champions because they beat England 3-2 at Wembley, but we're not getting into that. So they were world champions. They had 6 of the World Cup winning side in the team, including the 3 West Ham players, Peters, Moore, Ball. And Young England beat them 5-0. So, John Charles was clearly a very good player, youth international, Young England player. He was a bit unlucky with injuries. I mean, who knows what might have happened, if he'd kept his fitness a little bit more, but these things happen. He went on to make his debut against Blackburn for West Ham in May 1963. Blackburn won 1-0. But John's record here is that he became the first black player to play for West Ham in a Football League game. They did have one other player who played way back at the beginning of the 20th century when West Ham was still called Thames Ironworks. So, John's got another record there. Some of the photographs in the gallery, if you can get there, are great. He's got his England blazer on, he's holding a trophy really proudly. And that leads on to the next record. Shortly after he made his debut, West Ham won the FA Youth Cup, beating Liverpool 6-5 on aggregate. And the amazing thing here is that John was captain, so he became the first black captain to lead a side to a major trophy. And in those days, it's a little bit like White Walter Tull in many ways. Black people tended not to be given positions of authority as a captain, for example. So John probably had something to do to, it wasn't easy for him to get that role as captain. He must have been a great leader. And obviously Walter Tull was a great leader. Otherwise he wouldn't have broken through to the officer ranks. But it was very, very difficult for a black person to achieve that level. As I said, John did suffer from injuries. Who knows, he could have played for the 1964 FA Cup winning side, the 1965 European Cup winners winning side. But I don't think we should look back on John's career with any sort of regret. I mean, what he achieved was way, way beyond belief. It doesn't get the publicity it deserves. And I hope the work at the gallery and so on helps people become more aware of exactly what John did achieve. He played against all the greats. There are photographs there of him playing against Jimmy Greaves. Lots of photographs of Bobby Moore. He didn't just play alongside Bobby Moore, he was a great friend. George Best he would have played against, Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law, you name it, he was there. He was a good player. Sadly, he died in August 2002 at a very young age, but a great career, and one that certainly I hope is going to be more celebrated and remembered as time goes on. But I'm really, really looking forward to hearing Mitch talk about the, other aspects of John's life, because it sounds like you had a fascinating life. So I'll hand over to Mitch.
Hey everyone, hopefully you can see and hear me now. Can I just get confirmation of that? Can you see me?
Yep.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant. Well, thanks very much for that introduction. That was very, very nice. And also listening to the previous stories, very interesting indeed. Yeah, well done everyone. Also, thanks to Phil as well, because I'm aware that Phil also wrote about my dad. It wasn't a great deal, like a page worth, a couple of pages in a book, and it was probably about 20 years ago. And for anyone to mention my dad 20 years ago is quite, well, it's extremely rare. So Phil's mentioned quite a lot of my dad's history. He, as you know, he was very local to the area. Grew up in Ordnance Road, which was directly opposite Rathbone Street, where the market was. He always used to go over West Ham as a young boy and watch the team play with other kids from the area. They used to play football on the bomb sites and stuff. And he progressed, and he played for the area. And at the time, West Ham used to be in Essex, and he used to play football and cricket for West Ham. Played cricket for London. He got offered a position in the Essex County cricket team, and he had to decide if to take football or cricket at the time. He chose football. But while he was playing for West Ham, the area rather than the team that we all know and love, he played in a team that went unbeaten for 7 years during the schoolboy areas. And I think this was when the league was split into two. I think there was a Northern and a Southern league. And after 7 years of going unbeaten, they went and played a team in Manchester, and they finally got beat. I think they got beat 5-0 also. He then got offered a role to play for, well, not to play for West Ham, to become a member of the ground staff, which at the time was like an apprenticeship. And he done all sorts. He if you name it, he done it, you know, cleaning the boots and cleaning the ground and just playing football. And Phil actually mentions this in one of his books, that when he did finally get offered to join West Ham, he got a knock on the door, and he wasn't in at the time, and it was Wally St Pierre, who was West Ham's chief scout. And he went to speak to John's mother, and she was there, and his sisters were there. But as John wasn't in, he said he'll come back, and they asked who he was, and he said, I'm a scout. So when he come back later, they was all expecting a scout leader to arrive with a pair of shorts. And I actually mentioned this story to my family after reading in Phil's book, and they very fondly remembered that. So as Bill's mentioned, some of the achievements my dad managed to accomplish, when he did finally start playing for West Ham, at the time there was like a full team, there was an A team, a B team, there was a Metropolitan League, and he went through all the ranks. And before he became a left back, when he was playing in the Metropolitan Leagues and like the B team and such, he played different positions, and it's quite amazing how many goals he did manage to score. I don't know how many there was, but every program I've looked at, he pretty much scored. But when he got in the full team, a position became available, which was left back, and it was take it or leave it, you know. So he took it and become a tough defender, very well known. And as Bill mentioned, he did used to play against people like George Best, and he said George was something else in his day. He was one of the greatest, well, if not the greatest player in the world. And he used to say, George, go on, go over there. I'm on this side. So he used to try and get away from him. But yeah, he did get called up for England, and I've been looking. I've been looking for 20 odd years, to be honest, and I found all different programs and documentations, and years ago, you know, there was no under 21. I don't think there was even schoolboys at the time. There was an England and a young England. But if you look back at the programs for when he played, with his age, he was like 15, playing in FA tournaments as such, and it's all documented on the England Football Online website. So he played a couple of times prior to the 1962 match in Israel, where he did become officially the first black guy to play football for his country and to score, and it's quite amazing, really. And when I was growing up as a kid, and of course, you know, Viv Anderson is the guy to play senior football for our country, and there's no taking that away. But when my dad did actually wear the 3 lions on his shirt and represent the country in a match, it is quite. We've all got our own stories, you know, but like everyone else, it was also completely forgotten. No one heard of him. No one knew about him. So that matches quite a lot of other people in this area. And he was also very humble. Didn't speak about it at all, really, you know. He also, as Bill mentioned, once England won the World Cup, I think their very next game was against a young England, which my dad did play in, which they won 5-0. And he's 5 games that I also forgot to mention, there was a tournament. I think the official name was the 16th Youth International Tournament, but everyone knew it at the time as the Little World Cup, and he played in that also, and England won. England won it in 1963, and they retained it in the Netherlands in 1964. So there's quite, and also at the time when you used to get a cap, the cap wasn't per match, it was per tournament. So it's, you know, times have changed. Since then, since when the under 21 has been recognised, and the under 20, under 19, under 18, for instance, it's all documented more. And they've got people like Benjamin Adigee in there saying he was like, and also there's a blue plaque up for Laurie Cunningham as being the first black guy to play for England, or for his under 20. Yeah, for England. I don't know. It's just sometimes it's a bit of pill to swallow. He wasn't in the army like Walter or anything, and he was like decades behind. I do apologize, behind Jack. But his story was very much the same. There wasn't many black guys around at that time. He didn't really have any problems at all. He was loved in the area. As a kid, I remember driving to the markets with him, down Spitalfields Market, the fruit and veg, and so many people used to call his name in the street, Charlo, Charlo. Everyone knew him. Used to go out with him as a kid, and he was well known and loved. He was a fully subscribed member to the Swinging 60s as well. So yeah, he had a great time in the area, and a better place to be, playing for like West Ham, who pretty much every other sports team won't agree with this, but we all know West Ham won the World Cup. So that's where he played and grew up. But his younger brother Clive, I know Clive's going to get mentioned later on, but and I wasn't going to say anything, but the achievements he made was just, Clive is the star of the family. It's not my dad, it's not John. Clive went on to great things. He went on to become the manager of the United States soccer team for the Olympics. He was the assistant manager for the World Cup, for the male and the female teams. And this was before, it wasn't before women's soccer was popular, but you know, he at the time in the USA, women's soccer was much bigger than the men's games. He settled in Portland, Oregon. And if you look on YouTube now, it's amazing. It's like being in one of these South American stadiums with the flags and the flares and stuff like that. And Clive ended up, they retired his shirt for the club, so his number doesn't play anymore. He ended up in the Hall of Fame in America. He won every trophy you can think of, and his management style, he wasn't feared. He was certainly loved by all, and like most people, very humble of what he'd done and what he achieved. At the end of the day, it was just football, wasn't it? You know. Bill also, one more, just going back to my dad for a minute. On his debut, he was given the number 6 shirt by Bobby Moore to represent West Ham, and the next match they swapped over again. So that was a very lovely gesture. So he was there for 12 years. 12 years for West Ham, 59 to 71, which is quite a long time. The glory years as well, and also we're in them now, aren't we? That, you know, I've grown up for 30 odd years, 40 years of the club, of the ups and downs, but at the moment I'm certainly loving it. Yeah, so it was football or cricket. Dad chose cricket. Oh, his father, his name was Moister. He was from Grenada. He came over. I think he arrived in Silvertown, which is pretty much, you know, walking distance from the gallery, and he worked on the docks there as well. Very similar stories to everyone else. It was like Custom House was up the road. It was the entry into the country. That's why it got its name, I guess. But yeah, it was a very multicultural area because of the logistical reason of the nation. Yeah. Any questions? That's it. It's probably, you always forget stuff, didn't you? But that's it from me at the moment.
That was awesome, Mitch. Really, really learned so much about your dad. Mm-hmm. But obviously, your dad was a leader. Clive was a leader, and everybody praises your grandmother. Was it down to grandma? Was she the sort of matriarch? Or?
She was tough as nails. She was only about 5'1", I think. A little lady. As you say, she had nine. I think there was 10 in total. One died at a very young age. And she used to say up at the United Nations, because there was 4 white kids, 2 tanned, and 3 black. So it was certainly a melting pot where she lived, and what she went through, I don't know, but she was tough as. But saying that, she was very much loved. She was, when I grew up and used to visit the area, again, everyone loved her. Everyone loved the family. I think I think where it was so long ago, I think they suffered all these problems that come later on. I really don't. But yeah, she was tough. The Moister, her name was Jessie. Moister, my dad's dad, he went blind and he died when my dad was 14. Dad loved him so much, the whole family loved him. But yeah, she certainly held it together. She was funny as well. She was very funny. She used to yeah, she was funny. You can imagine what she went through at that age, like back in the 60s. She used to make sacks. That was her job, or one of her jobs, down by the docks. And I thought, a sack maker. And I looked, and yeah, it was certainly a job and a trade where they used to make these old Hessian bags down by the dockyards. I'm ashamed to say that I don't know. She was my nan, you know. It's like all of us, really. We never ask enough questions, do we, when we're young, you know? Yeah. Sorry, Bill.
Oh, thanks, Mitch. I'll let other people ask questions now. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just a comment really about the name Moister, Mitch, because Arthur Wharton's dad, he was born in Grenada, and he was the kind of protege of a Methodist minister called William Moister, and he was based in Grenada. This is like, we're talking now in the 1840s, 1850s, you know, around that first half of the. So I don't know if there's any connection there. I don't know if your father, but William Moister was a Methodist minister in Grenada. It might be pure coincidence, you know, there might be no connection, but
Charlo certainly wasn't a Methodist.
Yeah, yeah. But his middle name was William as well, you know. So
was it?
So yeah, a couple of links there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Him and his mate. I know Moister and his best mate. They came over together. I know it was on like a merchant seaman, but I don't know about any of the ministry stuff at all, to be honest. Yeah. That's it. I don't really have you know. Oh, give me a second. Let's have a quick look. I wrote a couple of things down. I think I've mentioned them. That's it from me, guys. But thank you all for doing stuff like this, and I've heard like my brother and sister, they actually got invited yesterday. They couldn't make it, but today they did pop up to the gallery, but the caretaker wouldn't let them in. So yeah, we'll get to visit. I think we're going to come down on maybe or I will probably visit on the 25th of October if I'm allowed in. It'll be lovely to see what you've got.
That'd be brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be amazing if you could come down. I'm really sorry that they couldn't get in today. It's usually
okay.
by appointment. Well, the expo's actually open till tomorrow. But yeah, if on the 25th when we actually have the talk for your dad, John, that would be great to actually have them there as well. That'd be amazing.
Oh, on the same day, is it?
Yeah, it's on the 25th.
Oh,
yeah.
That's just a coincidence. I'm in London for a different reason, but the timing's perfect.
Meant to be. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
We've got literally about maybe 10 minutes left. I don't know if you want to, because I know I'm really grateful that you touched on Clive as well, because also I wanted to, because obviously there's a connection there, obviously because they're brothers as well. So I don't know if you wanted to mention, Bill, quickly about Fred as well, because he was like one of the first originals. Not many people knew about him. I didn't know about him until literally this exhibition. So if you just want to give us a quick 5 minutes about that, and then we'll wrap up. And if anyone's got any questions to any of the families, please feel free to put them in the chat as well. Okay.
Okay, sure. I mean, just one more thing about Clive. He made his debut in March 1972, I think, at Coventry, and his very next game was at home to Spurs at Upton Park, 1st of April 1972. And it was the first time any Football League side had fielded 3 black players in the same team. And Clive was one of them, Eddie Corker another, and Clyde Best was the third. And that reminds me, Mitch, that Clyde Best used to live with the Charles family, and he regarded John as a brother and your grandma as the second mother. So, you know, very, very hospitable East End family for sure.
Absolutely. He arrived. He come over for a visit. He was invited over, Clyde, and he turned up at the stadium and it was closed. He didn't know what to do, and it was a member of the public in Canning Town who said the Charles family lived round the corner, and he turned up on the doorstep, and yeah, he moved in for 6 or 8 years. So yeah, it was a very welcome visit. But yeah, he was fantastic. He's our family, you know. But Clive also managed to represent England as well. He played about half a dozen games for the country. Again, not senior, but also again for many others. Yeah. But sorry, Bill, go on.
No. I mean, Neandra mentioned Fred Corbett. Fred is a player that was around in the very early 20th century. Phil and David might very well want to jump in here, and they're very welcome. Fred's generally accepted as being black, but the jury is out. We did an awful lot of research to try and determine his background, and we never got anything conclusive, but we felt on the balance of probabilities, Fred was black and therefore became West Ham's first black player. He was also the first black player at Brentford, even though Chris Kamara gets angry about that, because Chris Kamara was the first black player at Brentford when they were in the league, but he gets upset when we say it's Fred Corbett, and we've had a few friendly exchanges about that. And he was also the first black player at Gillingham as well. But yeah, the jury's out. Brentford, I think, accept him as the first black player. So do West Ham normally. But, you know, it's very, very difficult. He was never referred. Usually black players at that time would be referred in the newspapers as, if they were lucky at best, would be darky. And yet I couldn't find any references to Fred Corbett as along those sort of lines. But I mean, David got so many birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates. But in our view, Fred Corbett's the first black player at West Ham, and you know, quite a pioneer really, because there were very, very few black players around, just marginally before Walter. And as Greg said earlier, in the 1920s, Jack Leslie was the only black player in the entire Football League, until a player called Eddie Paris came along. You know, then there were 2, and the newspapers got awfully excited when Bradford City, Eddie Paris's team, or was it Bradford Park Avenue, got drawn against Plymouth in the Cup, and it was the prospect of 2, in their terms, coloured players playing in the same game. You know, it was just really, really unusual. I mean, if you wanted to just mention, I could mention Carl Francis, because the exhibition's really about players from the Newham area, and Carl Francis is a little known name. He was Birmingham City's first black player, made his debut in 1982 at Old Trafford, 48,000 people. They lost 3-0, but imagine, you know, he was just 20 and he'd made his debut. His manager said he is going to be an exceptional player. 2 years later, he dropped out of football altogether. He wasn't injured. So, you know, we just don't know what went wrong. Some players fulfill their potential, some don't. We tried to contact Carl. He's still alive. He's still living in the London area, but we were unsuccessful. But you know, some players go on to greatness. Some players just don't blossom.
Brilliant. Well, it's been an amazing evening. I just want to point out some highlights. Sorry, yeah, carry on. Okay, yes, so I was going to say, we've got the lovely banner from Clapton CFC, which is dedicated to Water Tull. We also have their unofficial plaque, which they presented to Water Tull as well. And we have the new Jack Leslie Heritage Plaque, which is at the exhibition. And I received official confirmation today that we can have that installed in November. So I'm going to be negotiating dates with Jack Leslie's family so they can come down and we can have an official unveiling. And I'm really happy to do this for Jack because I just feel like he missed out on the opportunity to, you know, be celebrated, and to be able to do this now is amazing. So open days are on Saturdays 12 till 3. Make sure you pop down for that. And the exhibition opens during the week. Book for the appointments. Details are on the Newham Black History Month website. So, and we have a talk next Monday about Water Tull. So Phil will be doing that. So details for that also on the website. So make sure you join in for that. And really thanks for supporting this exhibition. Thanks for coming today. Thanks to the families for joining in. It's really appreciated that. That was really great. So yeah.
Can I say what I meant to say? One thing I forgot is to say thank you to Clapton, without whom they gave Walter his first chance. And I regret I haven't been able to visit the old Spotted Dog, is it? But sometime
I've been there for a few beers.
And I think you mentioned the banner. If that's the banner, I've seen the trade union banner, which is absolutely magnificent. So many thanks to everybody at Clapton, possibly Clapton Community FC as it is now. Sorry to interrupt, Neandra, but just I remembered I'd wanted to say that. Thank you.
No, not at all. No, we've got a lovely wall display which has been done by, I'm going to say her name, Julia's daughter. It's a lovely wall display. I mean, she does amazing history projects, and it's on the back wall. I wish you could see it. It's amazing. It's a dedication to Water Tull. It's just really beautiful, and it's just amazing that she's done that. So I really appreciate it. I hope you can see that. I've taken photos, and yeah, it's really nice that she's done that. Mum's on the chat here, so yeah, I'm glad that she did that for you. Yeah. So yeah, if anyone's got anything else to say, then yeah, that's the event finished. I think you can say, Dominique, do you want to come in?
And just to say what a great event it's been, Neandra, and what a pleasure it's been for us at Newham Council to listen to all these fascinating stories, especially of people that are in the local area. So yeah, well done, everyone.
Can I just ask a technical point, because I'm not technical at all, and I see these chat things happening, and being a person, a male, I can't do more than one thing at a time, and I wouldn't know what to do anyway. Can I just say to the event organizers, Neandra, if there are questions that are posed through that chat that you think I can help with, if you can somehow or other pass them on to me, I'm very happy to try and respond to them.
Yeah, I'll make sure that we save them and make a copy, and we'll send them on to Neandra.
Yeah, you've also got the Water Tull Archive website as well. Make sure you go to that. And David and Bill have also got their book as well, which Bill is, if you move out here, we can see the title of it. So yeah, that's really great. And that'll also be on sale as well. The books will be on sale during the open days and during the events, the individual talk events as well. Brilliant. So I think that's it really.
Thank you very much for organising everything.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys. I'm hoping you'll come to the event talks. That would be really nice. And obviously, when we have the plaque, I really want you to see the plaque. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, there she is. Oh, there she is. This is the lady that's done the beautiful artwork on Water Tull, and it's just amazing.
Is that Julie?
Yes.
Julia?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'm sorry I haven't seen it yet, but Julia, thank you very much indeed. I hope I'll see it sometime soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Julia.
Really appreciate it. Thank you for all your interest in my grand uncle. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Hope you see you in the real world.